Thank you for tuning into the Patricia Show. My name is Patricia. Please press like, subscribe, and share. And share this audio with someone who you think may need it. Now, this is part 2 of grief. So when someone dies, we are not thinking about them at all. We just think about ourselves. Now, when you come to earth and you complete a life, some of the karmas, or maybe all of the karmas that you came into that life to complete, at the end of that life, you have completed them. So that's going to automatically move you up to another spiritual level. There are different levels on the spiritual plane. Now, sometimes you come here, maybe you haven't completed anything. Only thing you did is created more karmas. But we don't really know that until we pass on and we meet in front of the karmic board. And then we're told about the karmas that we resolved in that lifetime. So when you lose a loved one, the only thing that you would know is that, hey, they possibly can advance, grow, get to another level. And you would be happy for them. Would you want them to stay here and they have completed all of their karmas and they have grown? Like, think of yourself in high school. Would you want to think of Earth as high school? Would you want them to just stay in high school for the rest of their life? Or would you want them to graduate and go on to college? Because when they die, that's what happens. They graduate and they go on to a higher level of existence. So it's a matter of just changing your perception. When you shift your perception, everything is going to shift. That doesn't mean you're not going to grieve for the person. Yes, you may grieve for the person, but you're not going to grieve as much because you're thinking about them as opposed to just thinking about yourself. And yourself is simply that, actually what you're saying is that I love you so much, I wanted you to stay here on earth and be with me. I don't want you to grow and expand. I don't want you to reconnect with God. I want you to just stay here with me. But is that really love? Is that really love? Love, you want the person to grow. You want the person to expand. You want the person to be more of who they are. Reach for higher things. It's the same thing in the spirit world. Is that if your child was going to be here and going, if your child was still here, going to school, going to college, going on to get his doctor's degree, it's the same thing when you pass. When you die, do you think we stop growing? No, we continue to grow. We continue to expand. We continue to be the best that we're going to be. It's just that we're in a different form. We're in our spiritual body. So when you're grieving like that, where it's turned into a depression, where you want to leave, you're not thinking about your loved ones. A friend of mine, she lost her brother. And when she lost her brother, she told me her brother came to her in a dream. It was so real, she said, that he came to her because she, first of all, was grieving, but she felt bad because he died at such a young age. I think he was 43 or something like that. And she felt that he had a whole lot of more life to live, because that's usually what we think. We're not thinking about that soul, what that soul have agreed to accomplish in their life. We're just automatically thinking that, oh, they had a long life to live, a lot of stuff to accomplish. And so that's how she was thinking, that he died so young and she was feeling bad for him. So she had this dream, and in this dream, she said he took her to wherever you go when you die, and he was showing her around. And everybody, she said, had a job or something they were doing. And she said that at the end, he told her, stop grieving for me. I don't want to come back to earth, he told her. She was like dumbfounded. First of all, she was a Muslim. And so the Muslim believed that when you die, you're dead and gone. Your spirit and everything is just dead and gone. It's in that ground, and that's it. There's no life after. You're just dead in the ground. So when she had this dream about her brother, it was so real, she said. That's when she realized that, hey, that wasn't true, that we'd just be dead and gone, because here she is communicating with her brother. She said he told her that you have to go now. And the next thing she knows, she woke up in her bed. But she said it was so clear till it was enough to make her start doing research and reading more about what happened to you when you die. Because again, the Muslims were teaching her one thing, but this is something now she has experienced with her brother. She said at that point, she stopped grieving for him. And then she began to start reaching out, trying to learn more. And I think during that time on our earth, people were having a lot of near-death experiences. And so she began, which she wasn't paying any of that attention, before. And then it made her start investigating that more. So it actually opened up her knowledge. So her brother's death it benefited her, because that's when her path of growth began. And I could definitely say the same thing for myself. When my grandfather died, I was really grieving for my grandfather. And then 3 months after he died is when my spiritual path began. See, sometimes when people die, it's a blessing to us, because they open us up to the truth. No, let me put this. It opens us up and pushes us to become truth seekers. Because before that, I never did understand. It didn't make sense to me that how the Muslims were teaching when you die, your spirit die. I never did understand that. Even as a child, I used to say, how can your spirit die? Your spirit cannot die. Your physical body might die in the ground, but how is your spirit going to die? Your spirit has to go somewhere, but I just didn't know where. The Muslim would say, no, it's dead in the ground. That just didn't make sense to me. But after my grandfather died, that path began for me to find out what really happens when a person dies. And as soon as 3 months later, and I started going to the bookstore and understanding the process of death more, I stopped the grieving. And then I remember 10 years after that, I was talking to my friend on the phone. I had moved to California from Detroit. And me and her was just talking out. I couldn't talk about my grandfather without busting out crying. And me and her was talking. I don't even remember what we were talking about. And I said to her, hold the line for a minute. I went into the bedroom, fell to my knees, and started crying really hard. As I was sitting there crying, it came to me. As I was crying so hard, then I just stopped. And I felt something like I was freed me. And then it came to me. That was the last grieving I was doing for my grandfather. I had now released him. This was 10 years after he died. I was very close with my grandfather. But I felt in my spirit that time that I had released him. So I went, got up from the floor, because remember, I was on the floor crying. Went back to the phone, and now I didn't know that I hadn't released him, because all this time I thought I had released him. So it was a shock to me that I hadn't released him. So grief is something that, yes, we have to go through. But if we understand what's going on a spiritual level, when people die, it definitely helps with the grief. There is this book I remember from a long time ago called Embraced by the Light. So when you understand about dying, like I said, you're probably going to still grieve, but the grieving won't go into a depression, because you'll understand that we're only here for a certain amount of time, and then we're going to go back home. And once you leave here, you don't want to come back. Isn't it something when we're here, we want to stay here, and when we leave, we don't want to come back? But if we all could remember where we came from, then we wouldn't grieve when we knew where we came from. We would not want to be afraid to go back or anything like that. It's because we forget when we enter into this earth, we forget where we came from. We just look at it as I guess we come from our mother's stomach, I guess. We don't think of where we came from as a soul. Because if we remembered that, then I think we wouldn't be so scared to die. When I was a young girl, I was terrified of dying. I remember coming to my mother. I was in the bed. I don't know how old I was, but I was young. I had to be 8 or 9. And I came to my mother. My father was watching TV. And I do remember this clearly. I was laying in the bed thinking that when I die, that Patricia would not exist anymore. But I didn't know what happened to Patricia or what would happen to Patricia. I just knew that Patricia would not exist anymore. And I became terrified just thinking that I would no longer exist. And I got out of the bed, went to my mother crying that I was afraid to die. Now, my mother is like, what are you talking about? You know what I mean? This is the middle of the night and you're thinking about death? But yeah, I was. I don't even know why I was thinking about that. But I just remember this feeling came over me and I was so afraid to die. So death is because we don't understand it, it's like a mystery. We only know the people who have had past life experiences, what have happened to them and what they've come back and say. We don't remember that experience that we had many, many times before, meaning because I believe in reincarnation. So each time you pass, we don't remember any of that. And because we don't have the memory, we don't even know what happens when you die. But we have to, again, think about the person that have passed and not just ourselves. And know that when you cry and grieve someone, you're pulling their energy back to you. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Patricia Show. Have a great week.